and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. I am your host, Scott Daly, and I come from a universe where everything is the same, but there are no buts.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Just, like literally everything.
Wow.
Just no buts.
Okay. Well, I'm Matt Freeman, and I come from the universe where red means go and green means stop.
Huh. So like infinite universes with unlimited possibility, and that's the only difference you could come up with, huh?
That's what we're going with.
This week on the show, Matt, it is time for another one of our Doof Canon episodes. What are these things?
Well, once a month, those individuals that donate to us on Patreon at the Council of Doof level will get to collectively decide on a movie for the community to consider for entrance into the Doof Canon. Scott and I, and maybe some guests, will meet, talk about the movie, and then present our case for why it should or should not be admitted.
But as always, we leave the final all-important decision up to you folks listening at home. So stick around, listen to our arguments, and then look for a link in the show notes of this very episode. It will take you to our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/doofmedia, where there will be a public vote. You do not have to be a patron to vote. There will be a public vote for whether or not this particular movie that we're talking about today will be admitted into our illustrious list that I lost. I lost it. I don't know where it is.
I know. I mean, I saw it. So
you did. Yeah.
It's just really weird.
Yeah.
Really weird.
Matt, what have our patrons brought for us this month?
This month, our council has nominated the brand new 2022 film, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, we've talked about some new films over the course of the show, but I think this is the newest film we've done a canon episode for.
Yeah, that's true. That's interesting. Interesting factoid.
I think it's still in theaters in some places. It's finally available to rent on streaming, but I still think it's theater someplace because I actually read that it crossed the $100 million in gross receipts mark this week, which we're going to have to talk about that because that's kind of wild, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, and then after we finish this, you know what was last week, Matt? Do you know what happened last weekend?
What happened last
It's this
weekend?
big thing called Comic-Con that happened last weekend, the San Diego Comic-Con. And that means that we have a bunch of new superhero movie news we got to talk about. I'm being a little negative about this. I actually do want to get into, because the big thing that happened last weekend was Marvel came to Comic-Con, which they hadn't done since 2019 for reasons that mostly involve COVID, but also some other stuff. And so they brought their whole big slate. And so we know what the future of the MCU is going to look like for the next 3 or 4 years. So I figured we could talk about it and maybe see how we feel about where this whole thing's going.
Yeah, you might have to bring me up to speed because I've seen the new slate of trailers, but that doesn't really mean that I know much beyond that.
Yeah, I will definitely do that. I got my handy dandy notebook right here, ready to catch everyone up on the happenings of the MCU.
Nice.
But first, we have to talk about this month's movie, which is Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
I'm not your husband. I'm another version of him from another universe. I'm here because we need your help.
Very busy today. No time to help you.
Across the multiverse, I've seen thousands of Evelyns. You can access all of their memories, their emotions, even their skills. There's a great evil spreading throughout the many verses. And you may be your only chance of stopping it.
Matt, what is this movie all about?
An aging Chinese immigrant is swept up in an insane adventure where she alone can save the world by exploring other universes, connecting with the lives she could have led.
This movie was written and directed by Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. They are called the Daniels, colloquially. It stars Michelle Yeoh, Stephanie Su, Ki Hui Kwan, and Jamie Lee Curtis in the role of her career. All right, Matt, this is, like we said, this is a brand new movie. We both saw this movie before we knew we were actually going to have to do a show on it. We both went out and saw this movie ourselves. I have briefly talked to you about this movie on an earlier episode of the Doofcast where I was trying to convince you to go see it, and that conversation worked. But for our listeners at home, what did you think about Everything Everywhere All at Once?
I mean, I really, really enjoyed it. It is a very, very well made movie. It's extremely charming. It's one of those movies where even if somebody tells you in advance, like, "Oh, this movie's going to make you cry," and you're like, "No, it's not," you'll still cry. I just want to get this out early. It was kind of weird when I watched it because, like, I had heard several people say, I literally mean several people say, this is the best movie they've ever seen. And when you go into a movie with that in your head, it can't help but somewhat impact your viewing experience.
Sure.
So this is not the best movie I've ever seen, but I liked it a lot. And there's a ton of great stuff to say about it. I actually have practically nothing bad to say about it. It's just like, do we have to do we have to do that? Do we have to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing about this movie, and I think the reasons why people were a bit hyperbolic when talking about this movie is because I think when it works on you, and I think it works on the majority of people, it leaves you with such this profound sense of, do I want to use the word joy? I think so. I think joy is the right word here, which is why that's the name of the character. Because it just makes you happy. It just really makes you happy. It makes you hopeful. It affects you. And so you kind of leave the movie in a hyperbolic mood. This is a very sincere movie. This is a movie that you know, it's cheesy in a lot of ways. And it is proud of that cheesiness. And so you come out of it being a little overly sincere and hyperbolic yourself. I adore this movie. I also would agree with you that I'm not going to say this is the best movie I've ever seen. It's the best movie I've seen this year by far. I loved just about everything about it. I am with you. I don't think I have a bad thing to say about this film at all. I've been a fan of the Daniels for a while now. I don't know if you ever saw it, but they released a movie in 2016 called Swiss Army Man, aka the Farting Corpse movie, where Daniel Radcliffe plays a corpse. And it's this really fascinating thing that I think they just took into this movie and one-upped themselves, where they can craft a world that is silly, is absurd, is ridiculous, and yet they can make you care about it. And despite the absurdity, you find yourself emotionally attached to everything that's going on. I think the biggest example of this to me is the fucking hot dog fingers world, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. I love it to death. And you're like, this is ridiculous. This is totally ridiculous. And yet, by the end of the movie, you're happy for hot dog finger Evelyn and hot dog finger Deirdre and the fact that they made up and are happy together again. Like, you're legitimately happy for these two women, and they have hot dog fingers.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful, right? I think the word that kept popping into my head as I was watching this movie, especially toward the end, is sweet. And what the movie is giving you is something that I think we all kind of crave, actually, which is just earnest sweetness.
Yeah.
Sweet is a word that is not spoken very often in context of film because it's not like dignified and big and dramatic. But it's actually really powerful, especially when you're going to be as earnest and vulnerable. I think, you said cheesy. It's like you absolutely have to be willing to go cheesy in order to be sweet. It's very hard to be sweet while being serious at the same time, because that sort of becomes self-serious in a way that undercuts the sweetness. So anyway, all that being said, they really dialed something in. I think maybe that's why so many people are reacting to it in such a big way, is it's touching something in them that maybe no film has ever touched. And I think that's probably totally legitimate. I think that may be true. That's awesome. So
you're so right. I mean, like, especially watching it again this time, like looking at the Waymond character, who could be a disaster in a world where we are extremely cynical and don't want to and want to roll our eyes at anything being this level of sincere. And yet the moment in the movie where he just turns to everyone and is just like, can we please just be kind to each other? Can we please just be kind? Especially when we don't understand what's going on and what to do. Especially then, we just have to be kind. And that is such like a saccharine kind of cheesy sentiment, but also an incredibly accurate one that I think a lot of people need to hear. And I think that's one of the reasons why this movie is working. We are in a time I think we had a time of a lot of cynicism in pop culture where we were kind of, down on a lot of things, and there's this concept of doom scrolling and this looking out to the future and being like, we're fucked. I think we need our art in those moments to comfort us a little bit. And I think sincerity and sweetness, as you said, and earnestness and cheesiness, I think these are things that we need more than ever. We need our movies and our art to be unabashedly this. And I think that's exactly why this movie is paying off people in the exact right way, because this is exactly what we need right now. We need this, no cynicism to it, no winking at the audience that we're aware of everything here. This movie is just unapologetically itself in every way, and that is what makes you feel so good when you watch it.
Yeah, there's like a billion moments we could talk about, but I think I'll just follow on what you just said, the moment where he gives that impassioned speech. And I thought it was really great how they sort of couple that with a parallel scene where Waymond is giving, it's basically the successful businessman Waymond in the other universe, and he's explaining his life philosophy like very soberly. Like it's a very different emotional tone, but he's like, I don't remember it super well, but he's basically like, I think that you see my kindness as weakness, but actually, like, it takes a lot of effort for me to be this vulnerable, and I guess I feel bad that the things didn't work out, but I also don't feel any regret because this is just who I am. And it's like, oh shit, like that's an attitude that we can all aspire to, really. I thought that was really cool that they had that moment in there too.
You're so right. I think the Waymond character is kind of the key to everything in this whole movie. He's the thing that matters the most, and I mean we've got so much to talk about here. I'm kind of overwhelmed with the amount of things I want to talk about because there's a central metaphor that's running through the line of this thing that I could literally spend the next 45 minutes talking about with you. Before we get into that, I want to talk about Ke Huy Quan, the actor who played Waymond, who you and I and most people out there will know as Short Round from Temple of Doom, and I forget the character's name in Goonies, but those were the two characters he played as a very young actor, and then he kind of left the business, and this is the first movie he's been in 20 years. And because of that, it's kind of stunt casting in that you cast this guy and you know that everyone's going to see him as Short Round. Like, you're going to immediately recognize him from those roles he played as a kid. But also, he fucking rules in this movie, and so that's why it's not stunt casting. I think he has to do so much in this movie, and I think he pulls it all off.
I mean, to be frank, I did not even recognize him. So
wow, his voice is so distinct, man. I mean, it's a little deeper than when he was a kid, but it's so distinct.
I mean, as soon as you said it, I recognized it earlier, but no, it didn't jump out to me. But yeah, no, I think he's just perfectly cast for this, and he's just great. I mean, everybody's great. Everybody, we're not done talking about him, obviously, but like Michelle Yeoh this is incredible, right? I realized that her and Tom Cruise are basically the same age. So I made a meme about how she's actually the one we should be giving credit for being a badass action star at age 58 or whatever it is.
She's great. I mean, like, she had this whole huge career in Hong Kong and China, prior to coming over here. The first thing I think I saw her in had to have been Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Right.
I think she was in a James Bond as well, but I think Crouching Tiger is the first thing I saw her in. And man, she's incredible. She's the perfect casting. I don't know if you knew this, but when they originally wrote the script for this, they wrote it with Jackie Chan in mind for the lead role. And then during the course of development, they kind of decided that it just made more sense for it to be a woman dealing with her husband character than the opposite. And so they switched it, and then they were like, we want Michelle Yeoh for this. She'll never do it, but we want her. And then she did. And it's perfect. It's so perfect.
Yeah. Right. And I kind of wonder, like, if they'd gotten Jackie Chan, would they have gone way heavier on like the stunt fighting stuff? And I'm almost like, if they had, I'm sure we would have all loved it. But part of me feels like if you go too far in that direction, then it robs from some of the authenticity feeling. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off base there.
I think there's plenty of fighting in this movie.
Yeah,
I don't think they needed to add anything else. Yeah,
and it's really good too. Like I'm something of a connoisseur of martial arts films.
Yeah.
God, that sounds pretentious. But anyway, and like very, very high quality.
Yeah.
Like there were some moments in here where I like winced because I was like, "Ooh, Michelle Yeoh like really ate that one," and that's and that's like that's that's the style that they do, right? They're going pretty hard actually, and they're just really good at what they do, so they don't get injured.
Yeah, man, Michelle Yeoh's been making these movies for 40 freaking years. She's pretty freaking good at it now. Yeah. So yeah, before we get off of Waymond though, I really love the actor's ability to kind of, more than anyone, he has to channel these very distinct different personalities, because the version of Waymond we see at the beginning of the movie and the version that is taken over by the alpha Waymond are such different people in a lot of ways that like watching him, it's always so fun when you can see the actor like do the Superman thing, where you go from being this kind of hunched over person to suddenly you're straight backed, and like you just command more presence just by merely changing your posture. It's quite amazing just to see that transformation, and the movie really loves to just flip that switch and just have him suddenly sit up straight, and they're like, oh, whoa, okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's everyone gets to do that a little bit. Not quite everyone, but Joy also gets to do a bit of that. I thought she was great as well. I mean, she's she gets to both be like the heart and the villain at the same time. It's a very fun role, and like I guess I kind of want to use that to segue into talking about just like what we can vaguely call the effects, which
sure.
I don't know how all encompassing to get with that, but like I just love the sequences where like she's fighting and she's using her multiverse powers to like transform while moving around doing things, and it's done in such a visually engaging way you just can't take your eyes off the screen for a second. Pretty much whenever she's on the screen, there's just like wild stuff happening constantly around her because of like what she is and what she's doing.
It's so fun. It's so fun. It's such a fun idea. And you're right. Like her outfits continually change. The way that she kills people keeps changing constantly. They really like, one of the things that I love about this, and the thing we are making fun of in the introduction, for those that don't know, was Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, who had our characters travel to a different universe, and the only thing different was red meant go and green meant stop, which is real funny, guys. Great joke. And this movie takes the concept of the multiverse and what that would mean, and just does, I mean, everything with it, right? Like it is so creative in the things it comes up with, or what this means and how it would express itself. What does it look like when you fight someone that is simultaneously existing in all versions of herself at the same time, and can bring those versions forth at any time they want, and bring stuff from those versions forth at any time they want. And they really just have fun with it. And it's very impressive. This was a 9-person special effects team, by the way. None of them had formal training in how to do computer graphics and special effects. They just kind of watched YouTube videos and figured it out. I mean, this is the thing about this movie. It's kind of a big movie in that it feels big when you watch it. It was a very small team that made it. It was released by A24, an indie studio. It's a very small indie studio. I think they said the budget was about $25 million, which feels like a lot, but these days is not that much money at all. It's a very small production. And I think part of the reason why every single character we see in the movie comes back at the end as well, and is part of, just so happens to be part of the team that's fighting against them, is, I think that's a creative decision, and ties in perfectly to what I think the movie's doing, but also is just like a financial and logistics decision, because like they just didn't have that huge of a team.
These are all of the actors we have.
So we're just going to bring them all back here at the end. That's
pretty funny. I love that. I had no idea about the special effects. I mean, I've heard snippets of information about how a lot more of it was practical than
Mm-hmm.
I had probably assumed. Like, I think I probably assumed a lot of it was just green screen and slapping CGI on things, and I mean, they almost certainly used some amount of green screen, but I think a lot more of it was practical.
Yeah,
a lot of costume changes for sure.
Oh, it's so fun. I love everything that the Joy wears.
Yeah.
I love everything about it. I have a question for you though.
Uh-huh.
Is it ever explained in the movie? I think I just must miss this, where her name actually comes from, where Jobu Tupaki comes from.
No, I don't think it was ever explained.
I kind of love that it's just, we don't need to explain that. It doesn't matter. This is just what she started calling herself.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody's feel free to tell us if this information is known, but I like the idea. I mean, I think at that point in the story, you're not necessarily supposed to know that it's her daughter. And then so like, it's kind of a terrifying, evil sounding name. And then you realize like, oh, it's Joy. And then of course how all that resolves is just great.
Yeah. Do we want to kind of shift to handling this big old metaphor that this movie is?
That's what I've been trying to kind of work up to opening on. It's so complicated. So okay, I'll just try anyway.
Go for it.
So I don't know if this is like a theory that I have, because it's just kind of textually obvious. I guess the theory part would be like, do you think there's any chance that there's a reading of the film where none of the multiverse stuff actually happened, and this is and really the only thing that ever really happened was what we see happening to sort of the main Michelle Yeoh that we're following as she goes about her tax struggle, and her husband divorcing her, and her daughter being disappointed in her, and all of that can be set aside as its own little thread, right?
Yeah.
And then the whole rest of the movie becomes a metaphor about how a person can be filled with regret. And so, okay, so like, this is what I'm working toward, is to say, like, this is the best multiverse story that I've ever seen, because
yes,
it correctly uses the premise of multiverses to say something specific. Like, it's using the science fiction conceit to elevate a specific human concern, which is regret. And this woman thinking, I have made every wrong decision in my life. I am such a failure. Everyone is abandoning me because I'm such a fuck up. And then through multiverses exploring what else might have been, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think I literally believe that, like, oh, nothing, it didn't really happen. It's like, well, it's a film, none of it really happened. But I think that it's actually key to the way the movie works, that there is sort of that thread that moves through the movie where there is just her mundane life. And that's really the core struggle of the movie is her mundane life and her relationship with her daughter in that mundane world.
Well, it's the Wizard of Oz, right? I mean, did everything that happened in Oz really happen in the Wizard of Oz? Because I mean, that's exactly what this movie is doing, where we have and you were there, and you were there, and you were there too, and all the people we see throughout her Evelyn's mundane life are suddenly people playing parts in this inter-multiverse battle. So yeah, I mean, like, it doesn't matter ultimately whether it actually happened or not, but I do think it's an absolutely fair read to say this is all a metaphorical visual depiction for the sake of the audience, to depict what is going on in the heads of both Joy and Evelyn as they're trying to figure out their life. And yeah, I mean, I'm with you on the central meaning of this whole thing, of the concept of regret, of the concept of sitting there, whether or not you have access to the multiverse of your lives. One of the things we tend to do is think back to every choice and decision we've made and say, this was the wrong decision. Think of how much better it could have been if I had done this or this or this or this or this. And we can play those games forever, because the thing about those games is we never actually have to live in those worlds and see what it's like to live in those worlds. And so they will always be better in our head than they would have actually been. Right. It's this whole idea, like, imagine making every choice you think is the right choice, and then you're still unhappy. And that's kind of like just what life is, right? Because we of course, in every moment we're making choices, and we think, we're making the right choices. Or I guess with we can get into your stuff here, Matt, where you say, and how many of these choices are we actually consciously making, or how much of this is actually within our realm of ability to influence. But just this general concept that, like, our lives are the choices that we have made, and there's nothing we can do about it. Like I love the concept of, I'm trying to think of a way to explain this because it's so complicated. I hate multiverse stories. I think that's a good place to start. I hate them because in most multiverse stories, the thing that they do is they make it so big and so infinite that the individual no longer matters. That this Evelyn doesn't matter anymore because she's one of an infinite amount of Evelyn. So what does it matter? But this story acknowledges that and makes that part of the plot, right? Part of the plot is that she's an infinite amount of Evelyns. And so why do things not matter anymore? And the answer is, well, we're all part of this infinite, incredibly vast existence, just brought even more to attention with the release of those first images from the telescope, that just the mind-boggling space that is existence. We are all tiny little insignificant specks in that, but that doesn't mean that in our experiences that there's nothing that matters to us. Of course there is, because we are living day to day, we are making choices, we are living our lives. All that, it has to matter.
Yeah. It seems like we're in a cultural moment right now where we've been in kind of a mode of nihilism, and we're entering more of a mode of existentialism where various artists, but certainly this movie specifically, is saying, like, like there in a cosmic sense, there is no ground level of meaning, but that doesn't mean that you can't, like, create or find your own meaning in your own life. And even if you feel like you've made every decision wrong, like you still have your, in this movie, you still have your daughter. You can still, and like you could lose your daughter, and like that would be incredibly, that would be heartbreaking, right? And like her struggle is kind of accepting the fact that she has made all these mistakes, while also being able to say, like, well, you're the, like, Joy, you're the thing where, like, as long as I have you in my life, it's okay. Like, it's interesting. I actually have a hard time articulating exactly what Evelyn's, like, arc is, which I don't think is a flaw. I think it's a very complicated movie, and I think we're both actually kind of struggling more than usual because it is quite loaded with stuff and hard to talk about.
I mean, I think she's at the beginning of the movie, she's an unhappy person. She's miserable in her life, and she kind of simultaneously blames everything around her while also blaming herself and the choices she made. And she's kind of not there, right? Because she's busy, like, dreaming of these other existences that she wishes she could be having instead. And then she's, like, given the opportunity to see those things, and then give the opportunity to see all of them, to see everything, everywhere, all at once. And the central idea at the end, I think the most beautiful line to me is, like, you could be anywhere, you could be doing anything. Why would you want to be here with me? And the answer is, well, because I do, because I love you, and that's what I want, and that's such a powerful sentiment. Like, again, it's a little cheesy, it's extremely sincere, and it's absolutely beautiful, because, like, that's all of us, right? We could, like, we could go do whatever we want, there's, like, the idea that there's no rules. I mean, there are rules, right? There are rules to existence, but, like, the thing about being I'll say being a grown-up, the thing about being an adult, especially an adult in America, is, you could technically just, like, drive off one day. Like, there are days when I'm like, I just want to quit my job today and just get in my car and just fucking leave. And I could do that. I could do it. Like, there would be consequences. Of course there'd be consequences, but like, there are also things that are keeping me here. There are things that are keeping me in the life and the choices that I've made. And is it the life that I necessarily saw for myself when I was younger? No, of course not. It's never going to be that thing, because the dreams and the images and the visions of your other lives are never going to match up to reality, because that's just the way the world works.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and that's well said. I mean, I think it's kind of fitting that the movie is a movie about a parent-child relationship, because that's one thing where I just feel like the message is conveyed all the more strongly. It's I'm thinking about how, like, I remember when I was a kid, I asked my parents this question, and then relatively recently, one of my kids asked me this question, and the question was, "Why do you love me?" And it's interesting because it's like, from the kid's perspective, the kid is asking, like, what qualities is it about me that you love, actually? Mm-hmm. And as the parent, you're like, I can't explain this really, but that's not how this works. Like, I just do. Like I love you unconditionally, even.
Right. Yeah.
And that's something that I think is actually pretty foreign to the way a child sees the world, and that's fine. But it's just interesting because, like, that's the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, when you're young, especially, or even when you're old, you can have regrets, right? But when you have this one relationship with your child, you realize, like, oh, none of that shit matters. Mm-hmm. Like I can sort of feel regrets, yes, but I can put those regrets in a little box off to the side, and they're like inconsequential next to the meaning and fulfillment that I get from this relationship with the child. And
this person I made and raised and helped grow and foster into an incredible person, like, and I think that's like part of Evelyn's difficulty is, it's not the resentment of Joy. Like, I don't think she resents Joy. I think she wishes she was a better person for Joy, and the issues and the difficulties that Joy is having are things that she blames herself for, which is, I think, something parents definitely do. I remember, every time I have had difficulty in my life, like, I talk to my parents about it and get the feeling that, like, oh, we must have done something wrong, and that's why you're having a hard time right now. And it's like, well, no, that's not really the way it works at all either, actually.
Right.
But that's part of being a parent, and so their relationship has been, like, we see their relationship kind of at the beginning of the movie at its most strained. Like, we only get to see bits and flashes of what it was like for them living together when she was a teenager, right? Clearly they did not get along very well. We're seeing them in a relationship that is a moment away from being dissolved forever, from Joy just leaving and not coming back, and this relationship ceasing to exist. And that's, I mean, the same thing with Waymond as well, right? He's at his last thing with her as well. He's miserable, and he's about to leave her. And her father, I think we get little bits and pieces that he's sick. He's dying. I didn't even catch this the first time I saw the movie. It was only on the rewatch where there's just one line where she gets a phone call, and it's like, is this Evelyn Wang? We need to talk to you about your father. And so, like, they don't even say what that means, but, like, there's implication there, right? That he's not well, and perhaps will not be around much longer either.
Yeah.
And so she's at a crossroads with all three of these relationships, and is able to repair them, or at least to start moving them towards repair at the end of them.
Yeah. That's I think that's one aspect of the movie that is sort of uniquely just this movie, and uniquely the story that this movie is telling is the fact that she's an immigrant. This is an immigrant story.
Yeah.
This is a story about someone in a culture where they don't feel like they belong. They struggle with the language. They struggle with, she struggles with her taxes, which I think of as a metaphor for struggling with just being able to deal with the culture that you live in, right?
Yeah.
Like it's this Byzantine system where you're being attacked from all sides, and you're going to lose everything because you, like, didn't fill out the forms right in a language you don't even really understand that well.
Yeah.
And
I love the moment where she's saying, "You keep using these complicated words to confuse me."
yeah,
And then Jamie Lee Curtis' response is like, "I thought you were going to bring your daughter to translate." It's just so demeaning. Like,
yeah.
it's just, yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, yeah. And so wrapped up in all of that also is the fact that in her relationship with her daughter, there's also the same conflict because her daughter is thoroughly Americanized,
Mhm.
and so they have a cultural gap, right? In addition to everything else, and Michelle Yeoh is coming from a culture where she is predisposed to be more like the way her father was, even though her father sort of broke her heart in
Yeah.
the way that he kind of let her go, right?
Yeah.
God, like there's so much in this, and it's all conveyed like it's the most efficient storytelling ever. Like that's
really
one
is.
that's one award that I'll give it, is like in terms of like story per minute, it wins by a mile.
Yeah, because everything's doing something, and there's
Yeah.
so many moments in this movie that are set up by earlier interactions. Like there's so much, like a lot of the scenes are just kind of repeated scenes. Like when Evelyn confronts her daughter out in the parking lot of the laundromat at the very beginning of the movie, that scene is echoed in the end of the movie where she's doing the same kind of confrontation, and this time says something differently, handles it differently. One of the things I actually really love about it, though, is this is not a movie about how everything that is wrong with their relationship is Evelyn's fault and she's to blame for everything. I kind of love the moment where she talks to her, she goes like, she lets her go, but then she says, "No, wait a minute, before you leave, you are getting a little fat and you never call me, even though we got the family plan." And it's like, they're both need to do better at working at this relationship. It's not just one-sided, and I like that because they're both going through things, because her daughter is going through a lot of shit on her own, and she needs to figure that shit out, and she needs the space to figure that shit out for sure. But this is something that they both are going through, and they need to figure it out, and there's no one blameless in this relationship, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's one thing that, this could be me misinterpreting something, but I think that the whole trope of like, you're getting fat, it's like the actual mental process that's happening there is like, I care about you, and I'm showing you that I care about you by saying a criticism of your appearance, because then that lets you know that like I'm paying attention to you, and that I want what's best for you.
Yeah, I think the first time she said it is she just couldn't bring herself to say what was really on her mind. Like she goes to confront her daughter and like actually like try to hash shit out, and she can't quite get there yet. And so she says the first thing that comes out of her mind, which is just a way of being dismissive and critical and rude. But I think it comes from a different place at the end of the movie. It comes from a place of genuine, like, no, you should not tell your kids they're getting fat. I'm not saying that's like a good thing. Everyone do that. But when that scene is echoed at the end, it's like, look, here I'm being honest with you now. You are about to leave, and I am going to let you go if you want to go, but I'm not going to let you go before I tell you what I think and what I think about you and me and us and what I want. I think that's really a key part of it.
Yeah, right. I think it's important that she be fully honest there, even if some of that honesty is stuff that is maybe not super persuasive.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really key that Evelyn doesn't like completely change by the end of this movie, right? I think she is still partially the same person, which is what I think the scene at the very end of the movie where they're going back to the IRS thing, and it's what's her name? Becky, I think is her girlfriend's name. I can't. What is it? Yes, Becky.
Remember.
Becky was her girlfriend's name. And at the very end of the movie, they've gone through everything. They've mended their relationships. Everything's going good. And before she walks into the IRS thing, she says, "Thanks for driving us, Becky. Also, you need to grow your hair," because she had like shaved the sides of her head. And it's like, that's still quintessential Evelyn. She's not going to stop being that person who's going to be like, also, I don't like your hair that way. You need to do something about it. Like, that's just going to be her. And I love that. I love the detail of that. Is like, it's not like she's suddenly magically become this different person. She's just a person that's a little more aware, a little more in the moment, a little more living her life and being aware of the people in her life and how much they matter to her, where she was bogged down in thinking about these other worlds instead.
Yeah, Right. I love that. Yeah. And then of course the very last moment it shows that I like it. I think it's interesting because I'm pretty sure my interpretation is correct, but I guess it might not be. But it's like she's just sitting in the IRS office and she's slightly distracted by sort of the the sounds from all the other universes that she can still hear because she still kind of has the power, right?
Yeah, if you take the movie literally, it's not like she magically was closed off to experiencing everything everywhere all at once. She's just chosen to live here in this moment. So
right.
she is still experiencing every single one of those other universes. She just chooses not to deal with them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is it's showing you in the film, like, and she is continually making that decision on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
And maybe it's hard sometimes, like when you're sitting at the IRS, which is the last place in the world anybody would want to be.
Yeah.
She's still like forces herself to pay attention, and she gets this little smile on her face where it's like, yeah, like I'm content here, even though I could be being an action star in another world. And it's a great moment. It's every molecule is great. You know, it's funny. The more we talk about this movie, the more I am liking it, despite the fact that I already really liked it walking into it, because I'm just realizing how clockwork it is.
I just love it to death. It is like, I think I could watch this movie 4 more times and I think I would discover the intricacies of it. The amazing thing of it to me is like, if you want to, in the middle of it, you can stop and go like, okay, so wait, which universe is this from, and when is this happening, and how does this tie together with this? And you can do that if you want to, but you don't actually need to. And you can just like kind of let the movie envelop you, because like the universe where she breaks the window of her laundromat is technically not the one that we were primarily in, right? That is the universe in which they just go home after the tax. It's the mundane one, right? It's the one they just go home after the tax stuff. They just go home. That's it. There's nothing in the tax building that goes. So that's technically not the Evelyn Prime, as it were. But like, you don't have to get bogged down in that stuff. You just kind of let the movie exist, and it just continues to work on you.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I don't think I was thinking about that at all while watching the movie. Like,
I wasn't either. I'm just thinking about it now.
Yeah, the movie is kind of cleverly bookmarking things with you in a way. Like that's, I couldn't even name the ways in which it's doing it, but one of the more obvious ones is like, in this universe they have hot dog fingers, and then I think there's other small cues that are being used, like even as subtle as the way things are lit in some cases, or what she's wearing.
The one where Michelle Yeoh is playing Michelle Yeoh is definitely lit differently than all the other ones.
Yeah, that's like a different style of movie.
Yeah.
That one's great.
And it really like makes you think, like the moments where we see her kind of flash quickly through, God, it must have been dozens of different versions of herself as the camera's just like flashing through all these different versions of Evelyn. Like you watch a scene like that and you're just like, that's incredible and amazing. And also, how fucking long did it take them to do that? Because like each one of those is new wardrobe, new makeup, take one still image, and then do that rinse and repeat 3 dozen times. That's hours and hours and hours of work.
Right. And then have, all right, Michelle, ready? Make the same exact face you made for the last one and for the next 78.
It's remarkable and wonderful.
I
that's the commitment of this movie to what it wants to do here.
Yeah. It's just so beautiful. I love the one specific, as we're talking about, like the visual sort of coherence of things. I love the symbol of like the black circle, because it all starts with Deirdre drawing like a circle with her Sharpie around like the error on the tax form, and she like circles it like 8 times because she's passive aggressive. Yeah, and then that becomes like the symbol of the donut, or the
everything bagel.
The everything bagel, which
is the best idea in the world.
Yeah,
I made an everything bagel. Oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah, like it's simultaneously funny and sort of like cosmic horror dreadful.
Yeah.
It's great. It's
yeah. Which, by the way, I think any auditor looking at her make marks on the original document just like had a heart attack, because you would never write on the original, Matt. You would write on a copy. You don't touch the originals.
Yeah, I don't know much about all that, and I pray that I never find out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. So what else? I mean, gosh, there's like, we haven't kind of talked about how funny this movie is, because this movie is really fucking funny. I mean, Raccacoonie is like the greatest thing I've ever seen.
I mean, it's just the fact that she was absolutely convinced that the movie was actually called Raccacoonie.
Yeah.
And then,
of course, in the infinite multiverse, there is a version of that exists, right?
That exists and is real. And then we have to save Raccacoonie. Like, that's the Raccacoonie and the rock world. And
like this is what I mean by how the movie kind of uses the comedy to sneak up on you and then plays with utmost sincerity.
Yeah.
Because like Raccacoonie is absurd. That's ridiculous. But then you kind of feel bad for the guy when he's losing his raccoon friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
totally.
And then you're happy when they're reunited at the end. It's like how does it work on you like that? Yeah. And then like when the Rock turns around and the Rock is wearing googly eyes, you're just like, you're laughing, but also you're like, oh my God, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I was like, why am I tearing up because the Rock is wearing googly eyes?
Because it's playing off of everything. It's playing off of the fact that this was Wayman's attempt of making their world more fun. He's like constantly trying to make his wife happy and make their world, brighter and happier and more fun. And the googly eyes have shown that she's embraced that particular thing, and it's showing that she's trying to connect with her daughter in a way. Because one of the things, by the way, that I love this movie does is it allows Evelyn to have that moment where she actually does kind of fall into despair and nihilism a little bit. Like, she has that moment. And I love that the movie gives her space to do that, because I think there's a different version of the story in which she just immediately sees everything and then immediately comes to the right choice that is, no, I reject that nihilism. I reject that meaninglessness. I am going to search for meaning despite all that. And no, she has this moment in the movie that we're allowed to see her wallow in it a little bit. And I love the moment Joy says, like, I was really hoping you would see something I didn't. And so they just kind of wallow with each other for a while. I don't know. I love that. I love that so much, that we're allowed to see the character have that flaw and almost head down the same path, but then pull herself back thanks to, her husband, thanks to Waymond.
Yeah. I think it's crucial to the drama that she have that moment of darkness and despair, and I guess that would technically be the all is lost moment. I hate to say that because it seems so reductive, but it's like, it's just a really effective story beat for showing that, like, this isn't a slam dunk victory. That the character has to make a really painful change actually to get to the point, or a deep, profound realization to get to the point where they can actually do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And of course, the whole idea is the movie plays around in the space of being like a kung fu film, and it's like the people from the Alpha universe are like, oh yeah, you have to help us defeat her, and it's like, well, no, what needs to happen is they need to have a conversation in a parking lot.
Yeah,
that's what needs to happen. It's not about defeating her. It's not about this magic. Or there's not some skill she has to obtain from another universe to win. It's actually exactly what she has access to, and innately due to the life that she's lived, the life of disappointment that she's lived, that allows her to actually
That's the whole thing. Is like throughout this movie, they're searching for the one, right? The Evelyn that can stop her. And they interpret this as exactly as fighting her, killing her. I really love this idea that there's nobody in the universe that thinks Joy can be saved anymore. Even her grandfather, even her father, that version of Alpha Waymond we see, no one thinks that's possible anymore. The only person that thinks that's even remotely possible is Evelyn, and she's the only one that tries for it. And we're told, like, oh, you're the one that's kind of bad at everything, and that's why you have unlimited potential and can do everything. And it's like, well, no, actually what it is realizes the only person capable of reaching this person who is kind of fallen to this depression and despair is a person that has experienced those same things. Like, it's a combination, I think, of this unique relationship between mother and child that is kind of unlike anything else in the world, and also similar life experiences, struggling with the same things, struggling with difficulties with parents, struggling with disappointment in life, struggling with trying to find meaning in a life that you can't seem to find any meaning in. And so, yeah, that they relate to each other on a very specific level. And so she's the only one that can reach her. It's perfect. It's God, it's beautiful. I want to cry just thinking about it. This movie, I watched it again today, and I knew what was coming, and it still made me cry once again. It's God, I love it.
Yeah, I've only watched it the one time, and it just came out, so that was convenient. But I will definitely watch it again. I'm not going to hold this against the movie because that would be silly. But I feel I'm like, man, like if only it didn't have the like sex dungeon scene, I could probably show it to my kids. But I definitely can't show it to my kids.
That's a very tiny little part of it, but I get you.
In terms of being contained to that part of the movie, yes, it is. There's also the part where they jump on trophies to shove them up their butts, which my kids might just think is hilarious, but I don't think they
will absolutely think they were hilarious. I love that scene because obviously the man's blurred out, so you don't see his junk. But they put the blurring into the perfect right place where you can't see anything, but you can clearly see there's definitely a thing up his butt. Like it's and then like the whole time he's fighting her, like that thing is dangling and moving around his butt. It's just so fucking funny.
It's so uncomfortable, but like, yes, hilarious, definitely.
And then of course, like there's the moment where, like at the beginning of the movie, where those are her Auditor of the Month awards, right? And the camera cuts to that as she, you see these awards? You don't win this without seeing some bullshit. And you look at it and you're like, that's a butt plug. Yeah. That's a butt plug right there. You have 3 butt plugs, and then of course the movie allows that to be a butt plug. Like I think you could actually break this movie down into setup and payoff in a lot of interesting ways, because I think it's doing a lot of, basic storytelling rule of setting things up and paying things off in very satisfactory ways. And because the movie is moving so fast and there's so many things in it, a lot of these setup and payoffs are going faster than you're able to consciously track them, but it just leads to this overall feeling of satisfaction. Like you feel like everything's tying together nicely because everything was set up.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talked recently about like the Lego movie and what's it called, the recent animated movie about the alien, the robots taking over.
Fuck, what is that called?
Well, it's Meet the Robinsons, right? Meet the Robinsons. I
don't think that's it.
Meet the something.
The Millers?
No. Meet the Robinsons. It's Meet the Robinsons. I'm right. I looked it up. Yes. The point is, it's like this style of movie that is that we're seeing more of these days, where it's like a really high rate of like visual storytelling happening. And I think this is like the live action version of that. I don't want to flatten it too much, but it's like it seems like part of the school of thought of like early 2020s, late 2010s filmmaking, where it's like we're going to never waste a frame when there's an opportunity to convey story or character information.
Yeah. And just so you know, the movie you're talking about is definitely The Mitchells versus the Machines, not Meet the Robinsons.
Meet the Robinsons is a different animated film that my kids have watched recently.
Yeah. But yeah, I totally agree. It's the Lord Miller produced animated film that came out for Netflix last year, Mitchells versus the Machines. And yeah, I think you're totally right. And I completely understand the connection you're making here. Yeah, for sure.
Did they have anything to do with this movie? Were they like co-producers or something?
I don't believe so.
No, I'm thinking of the Russos. The Russos are the co-producers, which is totally unrelated to that at all. But was something I was thinking about anyway. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I think this is really interesting, right? This movie has done very well. This is A24's biggest film ever. Like I said, it's crossed the $100 million gross receipts margin, which is kind of insane for an A24 movie, kind of insane for a movie like this. This is speaking to people, and it's one of those movies that I think the reason it did so well was word of mouth was so strong. So yeah, I mean, we can kind of like sigh cynically at the superfluous "this is the best thing I've ever seen" thing coming out, but it did help carry this movie to get other people to that maybe would not have seen it to watch it. And that's pretty freaking great, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I didn't even so much want to sigh cynically as I wanted I just wish people wouldn't say that.
You're setting people up for failure.
Yeah, exactly. Because like that's in my brain when I go to watch it, and and now I'm judging it against the best movies I've ever seen, my favorite movies, and it's like, no, just let people watch it.
Yeah,
you don't need to go that hard to try to convince people to watch things, I don't think.
Yeah,
but,
I think again, I think it comes from a place of just joyous sincerity.
Sure.
That like I don't think people mean to be that over the top about it. I just think they were affected. Like I think it's important to say, for me, this movie came at a time for me where I was like I haven't gotten to go to the theater very often, and when I do, I see movies that I thought were pretty bad. Like I saw a string of movies before I saw this movie that I thought were pretty awful. And I'm like, God, are movies bad now? and then so I saw this movie and I was like, oh, no, just bad movies are bad and good movies are beautiful and wonderful. And I am so thankful they exist. And that's what this movie did for me. Between this and Top Gun Maverick, this year has been a year for like sincerity and cheesiness and absurdity. I actually think this would make a pretty good double feature with Top Gun Maverick. Like, even though they're very different movies about very different things, they're also movies that are totally sincere and totally committed without any cynicism to the thing they're trying to do.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I was personally worried that I had like aged out of being able to enjoy movies, that I was like too trope aware now, that I'd watched too many movies and studied them too analytically, and that I couldn't actually just enjoy a movie anymore. But it's like, no, that's not true. It's just a combination of, I think, fewer of this kind of movie being made, and then also us watching more movies that are just
bad. There's a lot of bad movies out there. It's always been the case, right? But sometimes you just get in a string of them and you're just like, oh my God, I don't want to watch movies anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
So before we get to the vote, I will leave you with one final thing, Matt. Randy Newman played the voice of Raccacoonie, which is just the most delightful little Easter egg ever. I don't know how, like, I want to be on the phone call where they called up Randy Newman and asked him, so you know the movie Ratatouille? Yeah. We got a role for you. It's not that, but it's kind of like that.
You're going to be Raccacoonie.
Raccoons are so big. Like, it's absurd to think a raccoon is standing on someone's head.
And they kind of make the raccoon look like extra gross and scruffy. So the idea of him being on the guy's head is even more alarming than the idea of a rat being on a guy's head.
Also, the first time you see him, there's clearly a raccoon tail coming out of the back of his hat. I don't know why anyone's not saying anything about this.
See, I don't know if I noticed that. Because the very first time we see that character is before we know about Raccacoonie, right? It's when it's like he's at the same restaurant as Michelle Yeoh, and he's showing her up or whatever, right?
That's after we know about Raccacoonie.
Oh, we do know about Raccacoonie.
Yeah, okay. and you do see the raccoon tail coming out of the back of his chef hat. But I even think like they're having fun, because I don't think the first thing you're going to do when you see the raccoon tail coming out of that is go, oh fuck, it's Raccacoonie, because like why would that be the case?
Right.
I think the movie has thrown so many things at you by then, you might have temporarily forgotten about Raccacoonie. And that's like, I think that's one thing that these movies like Miller's versus the Machines and this do, is they're throwing so much stuff at you that they can manipulate you into this moment of reminder realization. Like, it's kind of just like callback humor. Well, the thing that's so funny about callback humor is that by that point in the stand-up set, you probably have forgotten about that joke, or you're not thinking about it actively, right? And so like as the callback joke lands, you're laughing because it's like, oh, that's like the thing you said earlier. And that's part of why it's so fucking funny when you land a good callback joke. And I think that's exactly what the Raccacoonie moment is. It's like, oh my God, I totally forgot about the Raccacoonie joke from earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
It's fucking Raccacoonie. It's God, it's perfect. I don't want to talk too much about why humor is funny because nobody knows really, but this movie is fucking fantastic.
It's great. I think that's all I got to say for now, because I mean it's one of those ones we could keep talking about, I think, but I'm like, that's a good first cut.
I hope someone does a real close in-depth analysis of this thing, like a YouTube essay or something, because I think there's just a lot to pick at exactly what makes this movie tick so wonderfully the way it does.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's not going to be us. We don't have time.
Yep.
But somebody else, get on it. Okay, Matt, this is the vote section. I don't think there's been a more clear slam dunk yes for me since we started doing this show. So I have no qualms at all. I love Swiss Army Man, but the Daniels took the lessons they learned from that movie and made a freaking masterpiece in this movie. And this belongs on any list of good movies ever. So it's a yes from me. How about you?
Yeah, again, my standard is just movies that I would say that people should definitely watch if they have the chance. And I think this qualifies. It seems backhanded but I'm like, it's not the best movie I've ever seen. I don't know where it would fall on my list of best movies I've ever seen.
Which is, of course, a real list that you definitely put together, right?
Definitely a real list that exists. But the point is, regardless of that, I still think people should watch it.
Yeah. If you've listened to this entire episode and haven't seen this movie and just spoiled yourself on everything, first of all, that's okay. Second of all, go watch this movie. Oh my God, please.
Right.
Like I enjoyed this conversation, Matt. It was good. I liked talking to you about this movie. I don't think we got close to doing justice exactly how good and wonderful this movie is at everything that it's doing.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that knowing the plot in advance would hurt you all that much, because
I don't think it would.
It's just such a triumphant execution.
I agree. So that's 2 yeses for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But as we said, the decision is up to you now. So open up your podcasting app right now. Go to it. There's this thing called show notes. Nobody knows about these, Matt. Did you know nobody knows about show notes?
I think that it's been demonstrated many times that nobody knows about show notes.
We learned this on Kingslingers this week, that nobody knows what show notes are. But so open up your app. Sometimes you have to swipe to the right to open the show notes part. And there'll be a link there to head on over to our Patreon and vote yes on this movie. And then there'll be a little box for comments where you can say exactly why you voted yes. So go do that right now. All right, Matt, speaking of multiverses, though, we have to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse and what happened at Comic-Con this past weekend.
All right, hit me.
Are you ready for this, Matt? So
I am.
We talked a couple weeks ago about the state of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think it was after I had seen Doctor Strange and was pretty cool on it. I don't think either of us had seen Thor at the time. You have since seen that movie, and I think you liked it, right?
I did like Thor. I think I could probably there's stuff to kind of criticize too, but I was pleased with it. I think my litmus test is always like, what do my kids feel about it? And I think they liked Thor more than they like Doctor Strange. They like both of them, but they like Thor more. And it's a Taika Waititi movie.
Yeah. So if you're into Taika Waititi, which I definitely am, I'm expecting I'll enjoy it, but I still have not gotten the chance to see it. But so that is the weird, what we called the college phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we're in right now. That's the Phase 4. And at Comic-Con, it was announced that Phase 4 will be coming to an end this fall when the Black Panther sequel comes out, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, where they also played a trailer. This is the first trailer we've seen from the movie, which is good because the movie comes out in 3 months. So this is the first trailer we're seeing. But this is a movie, Matt, that, first of all, did you watch the trailer for this movie?
I did.
This is a movie that, I guess cynically, I will say is going to be a huge hit. And I think part of that, at least sadly, is many people are going to be curious as to how the movie is going to handle the death of its star, right? Of Chadwick Boseman, who passed away last year. I think they've said that obviously they are not recasting the role. The trailer I think makes it seem like T'Challa, the character that he plays in that movie, is also going to pass away. Obviously, someone is going to be the Black Panther. That's kind of how the mantle will be passed. But there's a lot of emotion surrounding this movie. And I think the trailer does a really good job of capturing that feeling. I got a little choked up watching this thing. And I was not like super positive on the original Black Panther movie. There was tons to like in there, but I did not care for the entire third act. But I love Ryan Coogler as a director. I'm really curious what they're going to do here. And I actually think thematically, or perhaps meta-thematically, Matt, a movie in which characters have to scramble to figure out what they're going to do after they lose a loved one slots pretty well at the end of this very experimental fourth season college years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, kind of trying to figure out what we are and what we're going to be going forward now.
Is that why you're calling it the college years? Because you're trying to figure out who you are?
Well, I don't know if you remember the metaphor I attempted to construct a couple weeks ago, that this is like the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the high school show that has now aged to college, and they're trying to figure out what a high school show looks like now that the characters are all in college.
And they're making that rough transition that very few properties actually succeed at.
Right. Yeah.
Now I remember. I mean, that's possible. It's funny and kind of sad. So just anecdotally, I remember, seeing the first Black Panther trailer for the first movie, and, thinking it looked beautiful. And this actually happens a lot, where you see a Marvel trailer and you're like, it looks amazing. And then you see the movie and it doesn't look as good. And you think maybe it's in your head, but it's not in your head, because somebody on Twitter was posting side-by-side comparisons between like the moment that you saw in the trailer screenshot of that, and then the moment as it actually appeared in the film. And in the film, it's always like totally different and like lit flat and boring. And like the background of the shot is like different and out of focus and shitty. Whereas like in the trailer, the background of the shot is always like some beautiful landscape or whatever. And this is super disappointing and weird. And I don't know what the deal is.
So just for those that don't know, the companies that cut trailers are not the companies that make the movies. They hire a company to cut a trailer for them. And the movie is usually in a stage when you're cutting a trailer that like color correction and all these CG things that are done at the end to get the movie into its final form are not done yet, which means when they hand the footage to the trailer company, they usually have to do some of that stuff themselves. And I don't know, maybe it's just like this is the command from on high that this is the way we light Marvel movies. And we don't see that in the trailer because that's a different company working on them. I don't have a clear answer for you here. I did see that tweet as well. I don't know. I don't ever go to my Marvel movies to be like wowed by the filmmaking, like which is I guess a shitty thing to say, but like I don't think I've ever like been like, oh man, that camera location or that lighting of that scene in this Marvel movie really did it for me. I that's not what I go for. So that kind of stuff just doesn't bother me as much, but I totally get the frustration there for sure.
I mean, I think there are some exceptions. Like I think the Guardians films, and I think the Taika Waititi films have been well shot and aesthetically pleasing, or at the very least contained really amazing sequences inside of them. Mm-hmm. I know this might feel like a tangent, but like it's actually kind of like frustrating to me now to realize, like, you're looking at a trailer for Black Panther 2 and being like, well, now I don't even know that the movie is going to look like this. So when I have the reaction of like, oh man, that looks awesome, like look at that shot, I'm like, that shot's probably not in the movie. So what do I do with that? I don't know, man.
I will say there are moments of Black Panther that I thought like the Ryan Coogler-ness really shines through. Mm-hmm. I just think when it comes to these big action sequences and set pieces, those are not directed by the director of the movie, right? Those are prevised months and months and months in advance, and those are usually directed by a second unit. Like, that's kind of how Marvel does it. And so I think that's why those sequences always end up looking and feeling very samey in Marvel, because they have a team that does this. You hire your director, he does all the talky bits, and then when it comes to the action bits, you have, don't worry, we got a team to handle that. You don't need to know how to shoot action, Ryan Coogler. We got our guys. Don't worry about it. This is, by the way, why I thought the third act of that movie sucked so much, because it's just more of that in a movie that up until that moment felt very different to me.
Yeah, it's literally the worst of the MCU third acts. It's you can't see what's happening. You get two guys wearing identical black outfits. Yeah, it's bad. Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
I am optimistic. What I wanted to say is, like, we have been very cynical about the MCU stuff, and it's, primarily coming from me as a person who really just hasn't enjoyed very many movies in Phase 4 at all, and definitely has not enjoyed the TV shows. I'm very cynical about the MCU. Not sure if it's my bag anymore, but I am very much looking forward to Black Panther 2. So I think hopefully if we can end season 4 on a high note, that would be great.
All right. So what else we got coming down the pipe?
All right. Where are we going from here, though? So here they announced at Comic-Con the slate for Phase 5, which begins next year, and then also a couple movies in Phase 6, which will go up to 2025. And then Phase 6 will end what they are calling the second saga of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The first, if the first was the Infinity Saga, the second will be the Multiverse Saga. And so it will end in 2025 with 2 Avengers films in 1 year. The first one is Avengers, I think the Kang Dynasty, and the second is Avengers Secret Wars, which is, a pretty popular series of comics that came out a few years ago. So those are the Avengers movies, which means, Matt, actually, that Phase 5 will have no Avengers films in it, which is an interesting choice, that they're waiting until the very end of the whole saga to gather the Avengers again. Fascinating choice, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be it might end up being really smart in retrospect, because it's giving us space to feel some distance from the fact that we just watched like this. I say just, but like, it feels like we just watched Endgame. Like, it feels like Endgame just happened.
Yeah, that was 3 years ago, by the way.
It was 3 years ago, but it kind of feels like it just happened. But if you give us like one more year and a half, then I feel like that it'll be like, I'm ready for the big team up. I'm ready for the big threat and the big team up and all of these heroes that we've presumably come to love by then, to get together and do the thing. The thing I'm concerned about, I've said this before, is like, I don't know who the protagonist is. Like we had both Tony Stark and Steve Rogers in the last round, who were both characters who almost felt like protagonists, and a few other characters who almost reached that level.
Yeah, who's in the Avengers right now?
I have no idea. Like it's got to be, like new Black Panther, whoever that's going to be.
Captain Marvel, I guess.
Captain Marvel, new Captain America.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I don't know, maybe are the Eternals involved in this in any way? I don't know.
Who knows? They might be quietly writing them out of it after that movie underperformed. So I don't know.
Thor is still around, but I don't know if he's like,
where does Shang-Chi come into this whole thing?
I think Shang-Chi is pretty clearly supposed to be an Avenger.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, man.
Ant-Man's still around.
Ant-Man's definitely going to be like the leader of the Avengers, because he's like one of the only ones who stuck around, and that'll be really funny.
So this actually brings us into Phase 5, though, because Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is what is kicking off Phase 5 next year. That comes out in February of next year. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read you the Phase 5 stuff, and you're going to stop me if you have anything to say about any of these.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to do the movies first, right? So we have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania in February 2023. Then we have Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which comes out in May of 2023. We have the Marvels film, which is the sequel to Captain Marvel, which comes out in July of 23. There's a Blade movie coming out in November of 2023. I believe Mahershala Ali is still cast as Blade. I believe that's true. I'm not 100% sure on that, though. Captain America 4, with our new Captain America, will come out in May of 24. And then there will be a movie, The Thunderbolts, that will come out in July of 2024. So that is the movies in Phase 5. What do you think about that slate?
I don't know anything about the Thunderbolts.
So the Thunderbolts are a band of superheroes that suddenly appears on the scene, and then it's kind of revealed that they're actually baddies. And so the thought right now is that this is what Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character has been doing. You know, she keeps appearing in these Marvel shows collecting people, and that's what she's been doing. So the Wyatt Russell Captain America is rumored to be showing up in that. The new Black Widow, Florence Pugh Black Widow, is rumored to show up in that, and some other characters.
Okay, all right, that could be interesting. It's kind of our Suicide Squad of the MCU.
Yeah.
The only other thing that really jumped out to me there was Blade, and I guess it's literally just because I kind of have a fanboyish love of Blade as a franchise due to the Blade movies coming out when we were teenagers and enjoying the first and second one quite a lot. But it's like this movie's not gonna begin with a blood orgy, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Like, what are we gonna do with Blade in the extremely PG-13 MCU? I
don't know.
Like, the whole thing about those movies is they're incredibly violent, and that's the fun. So
yeah,
I don't know.
So that is the movies. I mean, I agree. Like, I think Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania could be pretty fun. I enjoy the Ant-Man movies overall. I'm excited for Guardians 3. I think that's a movie that almost didn't happen because remember there was the whole James Gunn bullshit. He's back to make that movie. I like the Guardians as characters. I'm hoping they do something interesting there. I am excited about Blade. Captain America, I didn't love that television show, but I think they could do something interesting with the Captain America movie. So yeah, I mean, these aren't like, you don't look at this and go, oh my God, these are the must-see ones. I think Guardians is really the only one on that list that's like, oh my God, I think that's gonna be real big.
Yeah. And
then we get into our television shows. So we have, in 2023, we have Secret Invasion, which is a Samuel L. Jackson-led TV show on Disney+. We have Echo. Echo, if you will recall, which you won't because who would, is a character from the Hawkeye television show that they're spinning off into having her own show. So there's that. Loki is coming back for season 2. I know we were all asking for that.
I mean, I was really unsatisfied by how it ended, so I guess in some sense I was asking for that.
There is a new Disney Plus show called Ironheart coming. I don't know if you noticed this in the Black Panther trailer, but there is a brief shot of someone stamping out of a piece of iron a heart shape. So maybe Ironheart will be set up by the Black Panther movie and eventually have their own television show.
Okay. Can we assume this is like a Iron Man?
Yes.
Thing?
So the Ironheart comic is a young woman who kind of builds her own Iron Man suit.
Okay.
And so I think that people talked about it. The rumors are the T'Challa's sister, whose name I'm blanking on right now, the one who's like really into tech stuff.
Yeah.
People were saying she would make a pretty good Ironheart character.
Yeah.
So maybe that's where they're going. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I kind of thought that they would actually, because she seemed to be basically like Stark in terms of just being able to do magic, tinker tech.
Yeah. Then we have, and Matt, hold your breath for this one, Agatha Coven of Chaos, the show we've all been waiting for. If you're like me, you watched WandaVision and said, definitely need a whole show about that lady.
Everyone responded so strongly to that little song that she did that one time that they greenlit a whole show.
Which, don't get me wrong, I thought she was a great character in the show. I thought she was fun. I don't need a whole show about her backstory. I really don't. Man. God. Yeah, I don't know, man.
I don't know. I always like to reserve judgment, but weird choice.
Weird choice. And then the last show in season 4 is Daredevil. The interesting thing about this one is this will see Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, the characters who played Daredevil and Kingpin in the Netflix Daredevil television show that went on for 3 seasons. They're returning to the role. So if you watch the Spider-Man No Way Home movie, you saw Charlie Cox as Daredevil make a brief appearance in that movie. Also, we saw that Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin show up in the Hawkeye movie. So they're coming back into their own Disney Plus show, Daredevil, in 2024. But Matt, this is a 18 episode show, we've been told. This is not the 6 to 8 episode Disney. 18 episodes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Why are we doing that?
That's new.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just experimenting with the idea, or maybe they have
I don't know.
Maybe they had like 2 more seasons worth of scripts written from the previous show, and they're just like, let's just finish it. Let's just do this.
Maybe. I don't know. So that's the television shows for 2000 or for Phase 4. The only other thing I forgot to mention is that we have been told that a Fantastic Four movie will kind of kick off Phase 5, the one that will be finished by the Avengers, those 2 Avengers movies.
You mean Phase 6?
Phase 6, yes. Thank you. I guess so many fucking phases. So there's going to be a Fantastic Four movie. I think the biggest thing that was not in this announcement was X-Men. There was no mutant talk anywhere in this announcement at all. And we talked a couple weeks ago how the Miss Marvel television show started laying the groundwork for mutations and mutants to exist in the MCU. But we haven't seen anything. When are we going to see Wolverine? Nobody knows. So it seems like they're holding on to those cards for a longer than I thought they would, I guess, is what I'll say.
Yeah, I just don't know how you integrate the mutants this point.
You got to just use the multiverse shit. I mean, I think that's the only way to do it.
Because they had Professor X, but that's weird in and of itself. Because it's like, wait a second, Professor X. So what does this world have mutants? Are mutants common here? Because Professor X's whole thing is he cares about mutants.
Yeah, I think that's what we have to say is that universe where we saw the Illuminati in the Doctor Strange movie is a mutant universe.
And then further question along those lines is like, we got Mr. Fantastic and something bad happened to him.
Matt, so, it's the multiverse. Just, you don't have to worry about it.
But are they really going to do that? They're just going to be like, that was a different Mr.
Absolutely.
You don't think they're going to be like, well, he's very squishy, so he survived that somehow. And now.
No, I think they're just probably not even going to cast the same actor. I think they're just going to cast someone else. And they're just going to say they came from a different world. This is the we can do whatever we want. Nobody has to die. Iron Man is definitely going to show up in the last Avengers movie. I guarantee it. Robert Downey Jr. is going to be there. I will bet money on it right now. It's going to happen.
Yeah. Would you like $5 million, Mr. Downey Jr.?
Yeah. So apparently, actually, this is something that came out not too long ago. In the development process for all these things, for the overarching plans and for the individual plans, they write like multiple versions of the stories ahead of time. And so there literally is a version of an Avengers script. Did we get Robert Downey Jr. back? Yes. Script A. No. Okay. Script B. Like, this is how like clinical and organized these movies have become now, that it's just like, which, I mean, look, I do not think that means that art can't exist in these things. Obviously, I've enjoyed a great deal of these made for commerce entertainment programs, but it's kind of wild to think about that's exactly how they're doing things now, that they're kind of hedging themselves so much that they will develop completely different scripts just in case don't get person A or person B. I
it's interesting. I mean, I think I feel like Endgame was the first time that it ever felt like that was true. But that's I guess you can't blame him.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
it's really hard. Really hard. So I guess at the end of this thing, are you excited? Are you excited for the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Looking at this slate.
Yeah, I think I'm tentatively excited. Less so about the TV shows, because I think I'm think I'm like out on the TV shows.
I have never been less excited about the TV shows.
Unless somebody that I trust is like, oh, but you just have to see Ironheart. Then I guess I'll watch Ironheart. And maybe, I guess I'm probably will watch Loki season 2, literally just out of like angry frustration that they didn't actually end the season. And I'm like, what happened? What happened? What were we doing with this show? God damn it.
Yeah.
But the other stuff, I'm like, no, I'm not going to watch Agatha. I'm not going to watch Daredevil. The movies, I could see these being good. I could see them being bad too.
Yeah.
I think at this point, I'm willing to say like I think I like Doctor Strange more than you. It was Doctor Strange 2 is almost the exception that proves the rule, because I was going to say, like, when they put a really good director in charge, like a really visionary director, it tends to make a much better movie. But then there's always the wrinkles there. There's always like, okay, well, I do think Black Panther was really good until the third act thing happened. And
I think the Raimi parts of Multiverse of Madness were really good, but there were parts of that movie that I could tell were not directed by Sam Raimi at all.
Yeah.
And those were my least favorite parts of that movie.
Yeah, and I just want him to lean more into like, let the directors make art. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything about Thor: Love and Thunder, but like the thing that I have decided that Taika Waititi is sort of really, really good at is like making a really striking visual aesthetic, and like sitting down with a bunch of artists and art directors and creators and being and like getting a bunch of cool inspirations and making a bunch of amazing like set pieces. And then maybe it's true that he doesn't direct like the CGI fest third act, but like he definitely very strongly influenced like the decision of how to go about constructing it. Like I guess the analogy would be like Thor getting his lightning powers and then having the fight on the Rainbow Bridge in Thor Ragnarok, where it's like it almost doesn't matter how the scene is directed, because it's all like the visual style of it is just so amazingly awesome. And that's kind of how Love and Thunder worked on me as well. But
sure.
Anyway, yes.
You want to know what's really funny?
What?
I think D23, the Disney Expo, is having their thing like any minute now. I think maybe this weekend. And so like there are already announcements coming out of that. Like I just saw on Twitter as you were talking, The Punisher is going to have a series on Disney Plus. John Bernthal is going to come back. Deadpool 3 is going to be announced. Storm is going to have her own show on Disney Plus. Shang-Chi Chu is coming out. World War Hulk is going to be a show.
Storm as in the X-Men Storm?
Yeah.
Okay, well, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. So everything we talked about today is kind of already outdated because they saved some stuff for D23. So, oh boy, there's so many things. There's so many things, and I don't have time to watch them all. And so I'm going to have to make some choices about which of these things I want to invest my time in. But I am optimistic, I guess. I want this stuff to be good. I've enjoyed my time with the Marvel movies. I like comic book movies. I like them. I think they're genuinely pretty fun. I haven't liked the latest slate, but that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. And the TV shows, they'll find their way, Scott. They'll find their way.
They don't know. I don't think the machine that the MCU has created has figured out how to switch to TV gear quite yet. I think that's probably why the TV shows feel really good in the beginning when they're about the length of a movie, and then by the end kind of drop off. Maybe that's exactly what's happening, is they're really good at making 2.5 hours of content, and then after that they don't know what to do. So naturally they'll make an 18 episode series. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Maybe this is them attempting to really try something quite different and figure out what's going to work, because obviously what they've been doing has not been.
But I mean, I guess we say that what they've been doing has not been, but how much truth is there to that? Like from a money perspective, I feel like they're completely fine with how everything's going. We're sitting here talking about the artistic merit of these things. I don't think the business folks certainly don't give a shit about any of that. I think they're raking in money. Disney Plus's sub counts are growing. The movies continue to do pretty well. I think the Thor movie is doing very well. So I think Wakanda Forever is going to make a absolute shit ton of money. So I don't think they're worried about any of this.
I mean, it's even possible that they're subsidizing the TV shows using the profits from the films as a way of like keeping people hooked between films.
Yeah.
I have no idea if this is true. This is totally made up by me just now, but it's possible.
I still don't understand how the accounting for the streaming stuff works, right? Because obviously you have numbers of people watching, but how do you translate that to money earned, right? The TV show X costs $100 million to make. Y number of people watched it, but like, how do you? It's a subscription model, right? So like, how do you assign that sub money to various shows to determine whether or not they made a profit or not?
I think that they have pretty good tracking on what people are doing, and so they may do something as simple as like in their accounting books, they just weight what those people actually watched, and say like, okay, well, this fraction of their monthly payment should go toward Hawkeye show because that's what they watched, something like that.
I mean, I think if you have a new person that signs up for a new Disney Plus account the weekend that She-Hulk comes out, and the first thing they do when they open up the app for the first time is click play on She-Hulk, I think you can reasonably assume that this individual signed up for Disney Plus to watch She-Hulk.
Right.
So I'm sure they do have tracking for that kind of things, but it does get complicated. I don't know.
Yeah.
I enjoy watching my son just royally fuck up all the streaming companies' tracking services when he picks up our TV remote and just starts pressing buttons while walking around in circles. And just, we've got so many shows we have started on all of our different services from him doing that. So it's messing up all the data. Good job, Logan.
This is hilarious.
All right. I think that's it for us this week. Tentatively excited for what the future has to show us in blockbuster filmmaking. I love blockbuster movies, by the way. Top Gun Maverick, fucking loved it. I love big, bombastic, wonderful movies. I want these movies to be as successful as possible, and so I'm hopeful for the future of the movie version of the MCU.
Me too. I like the first, I don't know, couple of phases, whatever you call it.
Who knows anymore?
Yeah, me too.
All right, that is all we had for you folks this week. If you have any opinions on Everything Everywhere All at Once or the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, feel free to reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account at doofmedia. Also, remember to head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia or just click on the link in the show notes to vote on your decision for Everything Everywhere All at Once to be in the canon or not. Please do that. It's very important. This is the most important list we've ever created, ever.
It's true. If you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to go ahead and do that. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And you can find this on all of our shows over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you can also find the newest version of our ongoing short fiction writing contest we're calling Do the King Thing. That's in conjunction with our Kingslingers podcast, where we ask people to write a short story, 2,000 words or less, themed around Stephen King. There's wonderful prizes and good stuff. So head on over to doofmedia.com and check out that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. Can't forget that. Also, please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts. Each review really does help us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
That's right, folks. We are finally done. Next week's episode will see us returning to Ridley Scott. We left him for a week, but we're back, and we're going to be talking about his 2001 film, Hannibal. Oh boy, Matt. Oh boy. I am pretty mixed on this movie, or at least I remember being mixed on this movie, so we'll see. We'll see what I think about it on this watch.
Yeah, maybe it'll be genius.
Maybe. We'll see you next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.